Let's shoot.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of Wits Sport and the Wits Institute for Sport and Health, WISH, a very warm welcome to you this afternoon, joining us on this webinar, the next in our series of sport and sports medicine webinars offered by WISH and Wits Sport. A very big thank you to Michael Dick and Sharman Naidu of Wits Sport for helping us set this up and being in the background on the technical side. You will have met both of them through the course of these webinars, and they've been a great asset to us. Just in terms of a little bit of etiquette over the next hour, if you could please send your questions, if you do have, through the question and answer box rather than the chat box. We prefer to do it that way. We will not get to everybody's questions. I can assure you of that, but we will try and build in as many into the conversation as possible to try and cover as broad an area. I know many of you have questions for Jacques. And if you go to the top right of your screen and you click on speaker view, then you will only see the speakers who are talking at the time, and that'll make it a lot easier for you. That'll streamline the process. So we're filling up nicely. The last thing I will mention is that this webinar was oversubscribed. So if you have friends who did register but can't get in, unfortunately they won't be able to unless people drop out, but we will post this on the Wits YouTube channel, so they will be able to view it later. So having the formalities out of the way, it gives me a great pleasure to welcome Jacques Nienaber. Many of you know him as the newly appointed Springbok coach. I'm very lucky to have worked with Jacques as a colleague in the medical team over many years and enjoyed very many good moments on and off the field with him. So Jacques, as a friend and a colleague, it's great to have you here today. And we know that everybody's really excited to hear what you have to say, number one. And number two, excited to have you take us forward in this new era of Springbok rugby. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Doc. Yeah, it's nice to meet up again. As you said, we come a long way. It's almost, yeah, it's probably 20 years now that we've known each other. So yeah, it's always nice. Thanks for the opportunity, and it's always nice to meet up.
Jacques, you're a physiotherapist by training. I'm sure many people don't know that. They regard you as a coach and a defense specialist in particular. But let's go back to the early days as a student, physiotherapy days, your training. What motivated you to become a physiotherapist, and tell us a little bit about your training and aspirations at that stage?
Yeah, Doc, probably what motivated me to become a physio, the first time I got involved with or know about physios was my aunt. My mother's sister is a physio. And when we visited them, I got a little bit of an idea through chatting with her what physio is all about. And I was always keen on sport and getting involved in sport. But back in those days, sport wasn't a professional environment. You know, it only came professional in 1996. The year that I finished my studies. So for me, it was always in the back of my head. I always thought of it quite noble in terms of working with people who's doing sport and to be a sport physio. So that's probably that got my head in terms of doing physio. I was not clever enough to become a doctor. But the other thing that I got selected for was dentistry, and I just thought, listen, working with sports people, and not that I'm saying dentistry is bad, but I just thought, yeah, it would be nice to work with people in the open and in a sport environment, and that's basically how I got into studying physio.
And again, another thing people don't really know is that during your studies, a certain lecturer caught your eye, and tell us a little bit about how that changed your trajectory.
Yeah, no, Doc, I had to work hard to get into physio. I went the long route. I didn't get selected out of school, so I had to go and do BSc and then go through that route to get into physiotherapy. But then when I got into it, I thought, no, I must get a back door open. So I met my wife, who's now my wife. She was a lecturer at the university. So yeah, she had a big influence and she was the back door, and she always makes jokes now. She said, listen, I married her to have a little bit of a back door, and then now I'm not even using my degree anymore, but I'm still sitting with her.
Jacques, I remember those days on the sideline in Dunedin and Auckland and Sydney, and those times we were in the hotel room having breakfast and moving salt and pepper cellars around the table, discussing tactics. You obviously had a feeling that you wanted to get into the tactical side of the game from quite early on in your involvement in rugby. Was there a moment on the sort of road to Damascus where you said, I actually want to switch, I want to become a coach? How did you evolve from physio to coach?
The move actually came through. It's a long story. So yeah, as you know, Doc, I was always keen in terms of the tactical things and listened, and that probably got embedded in me when Rassie was the captain of the Cats. He bought a machine through the VNNR back in the days, and he did the stats of the Cats. So how many passes, how many breakdowns, and I had a nice big apartment in Catherine Street, and our two, as a physio, you always get the bigger rooms because you use your room as a treatment area. So I had two rooms in Catherine Street, and then eventually Rassie said, "No, he's going to move in, and I must treat the guys in my foyer or in the sitting area, and he's going to take the supposedly physio room. He's going to take that and he's going to sleep there." So we shared the hotel facility, and he would always after matches start coding and doing the analysis of our games, and sometimes he would call me over and say, "Come and have a look here. Look how well this guy did. Look how well this flanker did in closing the vacuum from a scrum. Yes, this is a good tactic they're doing at Lineout." So that's probably where the seed got planted. I mean, I never then thought I'm ever going to be into coaching or anything like that. But then from there, I became a physio, and then Doc Derek Kutsia was our S&C coach at the Cheetahs. He went with Jacques to the box, and there was an opening there. And then Rassie and them asked, "Listen, are you keen to move into the S&C side of things?" So then I went into the S&C side. And as a S&C coach, you actually get to work with the whole squad on the field. And that's where I actually started enjoying working with the team and doing some warm-up drills with them and stuff like that. So I would say it probably went to sum it up. The seed got planted through Rassie doing his analysis in my physio room. And then moving over from physio to S&C coach actually got me on the field working with players, doing final phase rehab, which you do as a physio a little bit, but you get to do more of that, and doing final phase. You always have to think out of the box in terms of creating drills that's going to simulate the environment that the player is going through. So you always has to be creative in terms of that, and then working as a SC coach, working with the whole squad. That's probably where I started thinking, I enjoy this. And then when Rassie actually made the suggestion when I moved over to Western Province, would you like to go and become a defense coach? I jumped to the opportunity.
Excellent. How has your perspective as a physiotherapist influenced you as a coach? You come from that background, and it must have had a role to play in how you conduct yourself as a coach. Has it had an influence, or have you switched over completely and left your physio side behind?
No, I would say the biggest thing that I probably, as a physiotherapist, a sports doctor, I think the biggest concept that I probably still use a lot today is clinical reasoning. You know, as you know, when a patient walks into your office, it can be from a ankle to a shoulder to whatever, and the patient's got pain. So you have to go through this whole reasoning process, asking questions, doing evaluation, to get to the root of the problem, or to get to a diagnosis. And then once only you've got a diagnosis and you went through all these layers of questions and is it this, is it that, and almost finding your way through whatever it can be, and you get to the diagnosis, then you work your way back up in building a treatment plan. So I would say I still do that currently uh, even in, let's say, defense coaching, when we decided to move from a more passive defense system to a more aggressive line speed system. You got to go through all the layers and get to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is simple. The attacking players became too good. They had too much time on the ball. They made better decisions. You couldn't force them in making errors. So that was the root of the problem. And now you have to build up a treatment plan for that, to find a solution for that problem. So I would say I still use it daily. I mean, clinical reasoning and that skill set that you develop when you are when you do medicine, and I'm talking all of it, a dietitian, the whole process of clinical reasoning is probably one of the biggest assets, and I still use it to today.
Do you think the sort of emotional intelligence side of being a clinician has helped? For instance, used to treating players and giving players bad news when they have an injury and time off, in terms of translating that to a situation as a coach where you're dealing with a player who's out of form and you need to try and work with them? Has that been of assistance to you?
No, definitely. I think that the biggest thing that you learn as a physio is not to lie to a player. So honesty is probably the best policy, and I think that is probably the big thing in terms of being a coach or being a defense coach, is to be open and honest with the player. And then also, when you're open and honest with a patient, when you say, listen, you currently have a problem in terms of this is your problem, but I'm going to walk a path with you and I'm going to get you back onto the field. That's probably the same thing that you will have to do as a coach, which is, listen, you're probably not up to standard currently with your defense, but don't worry, I'm going to walk a path with you. I'm going to intervene with your tackle technique, or this is the pathway. So I would say that the process of, there's a problem, but we're going to create a pathway in how we're going to get you better and how we're going to reevaluate you. A reevaluation is a big thing in terms of coaching. Listen, this is where you are currently. You can only improve once you can measure stuff. So if we measure, let's say, I'm going to take it back to a practical example. If I measure your defense and I tell you what's the 5 things that I measure you on, and then, okay, this is the building blocks. We're going to get you to the level that we want you. Are you keen? This is the process. And normally you get buy-in from the player there. And then you walk that way with the player. I think that's probably what I learned as a physio, is a player comes and lie on your bed. He's got a back problem. You say, okay, listen, let's do an evaluation on you, measurement, because the moment you get measurement, you can start improving. Okay, you've got a poor core. Listen, we got to release this. You're tight, yeah, and you build that process, and you get the buy-in from the player to actually do his stuff, and also not only you doing everything, but him buying into it. I think that's probably, I'm still using it till today, and that's probably what I learned from being a physio is the pathway, taking a play in, discussing, being open and honest, and sometimes it's tough to swallow for a player, and also tough to swallow if he doesn't agree with you, but we're going to form a collective between myself and the player, and we're going to work it up and sort out your issues, yeah.
Do you still find yourself getting involved on the medical side, or have you drawn a strict line as a coach now? Do you not cross that divide anymore, or do you still give input? I always respected your practical advice in terms of treating players, and 25 years of experience you don't want to throw out of the window. Do you still put a word in with your medical team, or do you leave it to them altogether?
No, I would say I would leave it to them altogether. We got a saying in our system that, listen, you stay in your lane. Not to say we've got a very transparent environment. So let me start with that. So let's say I'm going to take defense again. Let's say I'm responsible. Defense is my responsibility, but it is expected of the other coaches to give input. The same with the attack coach. It's his responsibility, but it's expected of me to give input when I see input. So our whole environment within the Springboks, from a management point of view, works with that. There's somebody responsible for something, but we all give input. There's no hierarchy in terms of this guy's ahead of this guy, this guy's below this guy. You're not allowed to say anything. I mean, in our coaches' meetings, the performance analyst will give input on defense. If you see something, you've got the right to open your mouth and say it. We don't want the bunch of head nodders in our environment. But when the physios and the doctor give his medical opinion, I will not interfere there. I mean, that is the responsibility, but I would ask input, or I will give input if it's asked of me. And I think probably the thing that helps me is that when the doctors and the physios give a report back on the injury status, is it's easy for me to translate it from a medical point of view to a coaching point of view, understanding that. So what we as coaches would like to know is percentages. What is the chance of this guy playing on Saturday? If you tell me 30%, I know, okay, listen, I need to get, there's still a possibility that he will be ready, but it's a long shot. But if you tell me 80%, then I know, okay, there is still a possibility that he won't make it, but I can maybe put my bucks on this guy making it till Saturday. So it's always a nice thing. Because I understand a little bit about the medical part, when the doctors say, listen, this guy has this type of injury, and it's easy for me when they go out, okay, how will this influence the player? Listen, he probably will struggle. Let's take a simple AC joint. He's probably going to struggle giving passes to his left-hand side. He will still have a fair bit of discomfort. It might flare up during the game, and that might influence his performance in the game. So AC joint, he probably will be able to play, but just know, as coach, I would have this offline with the coaches. Just know that there might become a time in the game that we see his performance are dropping, and it might be because of his injury. Just have a backup plan for that. If let's say it's a 12 center and we've got a starter move that wants to this player to give a 20 meter pass to his left or right hand side, the attack coach must understand that, listen, he might struggle with that skill set. If you don't look at that skill set during the course of the week, it might be something that he would struggle to execute on the game day. So maybe can you alter the starter move so that he doesn't have to make the pass, so that maybe the fly-off makes the pass or whatever. So maybe a little bit of adding some practicality in terms of injury, and saying, listen, it might not be the case. Just know that it might have an influence.
So you won't interfere in the diagnosis and management, but you have a better idea of how to translate that into a coaching context. That sounds like a very valuable asset. You alluded to not having a pecking order. I want to lead into the culture around the Springboks. There a lot is said about the culture in the All Blacks, the so-called no dickhead policy, etc., etc. What type of culture evolved in the build-up to Rugby World Cup 2019? When did that process start? And describe the environment, the context of Springbok rugby as it is currently.
I think we do it a little bit different. And not to say that we're right. I don't think there's a right and a wrong way. But when we started in 2018, we didn't sit down and say, okay, what must the Springbok culture be like? We started working with the players because we, from the understanding that a culture is something that would come out, you know. So you can write down that you want a refusal to be defeated as one of your eccentric. Or when people look at your team, it must be one of the characteristics that they pick up in your play is that, listen, this team they refuse to be defeated. If they 24-3 down against England the first test at Ellis Park, they will not go and lie down. You can write it down, and it's nice to have it, but it's not necessarily that it would manifest, because you don't know if you have those type of players. You don't know if the team is that type of team. You don't know. But it's nice to have it in words. But so we do it probably differently. So as we work with a team, you see, to be 24-3 down, trying a new defense system, getting skinned on the edge, having 2 first test capper wings, yes, and a refusal to be defeated was something that this team just had from the start. So yes, later on you can say, listen, if you join this team, if you don't have that, that characteristic in you, you're probably not going to fit into this group because this group has got it. It's so maybe it's the other way around. Normally in other teams that I've been part of, guys will start and have a brainstorm and get somebody in, and they will write down, okay, we're going to have trust, and we're going to have energy, and we're going to refuse to lie down. But it's nice words, but it's not necessarily that it will manifest in a team. And once you start working with a team and you give it time to evolve on its own, you will probably be able to pull out certain aspects that you can see visually. Listen, this team has got it. It's not something that's a pie in the sky. They have got it. So then you guys know that we have this. We are going to live up to this because that's one of our cultures. So I would say we didn't go down and sit down and say, listen, let's discuss what type of culture we will have. For instance, I think the culture that we had was there wasn't the rules. And normally when you sit into a team, they would be, okay, the fine system of this team is that if you're late for a meeting, there's 1,000 Rand that you have to pay. If you have the wrong clothes on, you do that. Most teams have that. We had none of that. There was nothing. If you were late for a meeting and you say, sorry, I was late, I overslept, understandable. We wanted to treat the players as adults. So, but if you come late 3 times, 4 times, then maybe the Springbok environment, it's not that important to you. Because if it was important to you, you would have been on time. So I think we probably went from it from a different perspective where we said, listen, we're all adults here. There's not going to be a fine system. If you're late, you're late. And if you say sorry, it's sorry. But if it happens regularly, maybe it's not that important to you. So I think that from the onset, that was something that was different that Rassie brought in. And I think the main thing is we wanted to treat the players as adults. And I must say the other thing that the Springboks, we had a big family. We opened to families in the World Cup. The wives, and it's not, again, I'm stressing, it's not the right or the wrong way. There is no right or wrong way. It's just the way we did things, and it worked for this particular group. So we've got a few older players in our team who's got families, who's got kids. So from the onset, we never said the wives can travel with us. When we travel and do the rugby championship, there's nothing that say, listen, the wives can't travel with. We would love them to travel with. You can get your kids to travel with. So in the World Cup, we had our families there, and they are allowed within the team. They are allowed to eat breakfast with the players, and it was the nicest thing when you walk into the dining section that there's kids running around and they're laughing, and it's just normal. It was just a normal environment. Where other teams, they didn't get the wives traveled with, and the wives weren't allowed to stay in the same hotel room or the same hotels as where the players and the team stayed. So they had to stay in different hotel rooms. And I'm stressing it again. There's no right or wrong way. It's just the other way that other teams operated, and it was successful for them. But I mean, that was probably what I found different in our team and the previous teams that I was part of, is that it was all inclusive. Families, there was kids on the bus driving back from wherever we could get families involved. We got them involved, or Rassie got them involved. We want to make it as family friendly as possible.
I want to talk a little bit about mentorship. I think it became very clear to people who had a little bit of insight into what was going at the Rugby World Cup that Rassie was a strong personality, Sia was a strong personality, and they seemed to carry a lot of that over onto the squad. Tell me a little about the leadership in the team environment, and who were the mentors that were important to you in your career and in this particular Springbok environment?
I would say we were blessed in terms of we had a lot of good leaders in our team. I mean, if you look at that team, guys who captained the Springboks, it was Peter Steph de Tooy, it was Sia, it was Dwayne Vermeulen, it was Skull Brits, even Itzebeth captained it. I think there was more. I think at one stage when we had some big discussions around simple things that can we were together for 19 weeks, so we had a open and honest conversation in terms of small little things, but they in Afrikaans is a nice saying, klein jakkeltjies eet die wingerd op. So these small little things create big problems. So simple thing like music on a bus, like practical stuff. So we had all the captains, guys who captained the box before, sitting there. I think there was 7 of them. So they were sitting there, and everybody gave input. Like I said, we had a very transparent environment. So there wasn't the first thing Rassie probably said is there's no senior and junior, because and he explained it like this: if Herschel Yankees is seen as a junior and Prof is his senior, because they have a 5-year age difference, let's say, make it simple for me for maths, let's say Prof is 25 and Herschel is 20. So who's the senior and junior? No, easy. Herschel is the junior. Okay. So when Prof is 30 and Herschel is 25, who's the senior and junior? No, it's Prof. Why? Because he's 5 years older. Let's say Herschel's got a bigger influence on the team then. When does Herschel ever going to take over Prof in terms of being the senior guy? So seniority in our team was about input and output. It was about ownership. It wasn't about how old of you, how many test matches you've played for the box. It was never about that. So even leadership was leadership. Sia's the captain, but there was other leaders. There was defensive leaders. There was physical leaders. There was the leaders of the scrum, and they all had their own roles to play. So it was never. So it was a combined thing, and I don't want to take anything away from Sia or add to other people, but it was a collective. And I must say, Sia was what I thought he did quite well. He was never, that's his personality. He's never a guy that, listen, this is my show, I want to run it the way I want it. He was also open and transparent with, this is my responsibility, but I want input, please. I want input. Just like we managed with the coaching or the coaching staff. There was always, this is your responsibility, but we expect the other guys to give input. So I think we were lucky in terms of that we had a very strong leadership or a strong group that didn't have egos in terms of my beat. I don't want you to give input on that. I think we were lucky and blessed in terms of that. Mentors in my mind, yes, I had a few. I mean, when I started out, and I'm talking that in 1996. I mean, I started at the junior teams of the Free State, and that was one of my mentors. He was the doctor at the Shimlas, where I started working as a doctor, as a physiotherapist. So he mentored me. You were one of my mentors when I went into, you can say, international or the big scene in terms of being involved in Super Rugby and traveling and stuff like that. So I was lucky enough, Doc, to have a lot of mentors in different facets. When I went over to SNC, they could see as one of my mentors, because he was at that stage one of the top guys in the SNC field. So I was blessed. But I must say, if you look at rugby, I would say probably Rassie has had the biggest influence. You know, he took big bets on me in moving out of physio to SNC. I think that would have been an interesting conversation to convince Harold and Piet Kleinans, listen, let's take this guy from physio to SNC. And I think even a bigger conversation, listen, when we were at Western Province, where that, can you imagine that talk in the boardroom? Listen, I'm going to take this S&C coach who's actually a bit of a physio. We're going to make him a defense coach. I think so. A lot of that was probably facilitated by Rassie, and in terms of how I got into the coaching part.
I want to go to some Rugby World Cup specific questions. That we kept in touch quite a lot through WhatsApp through the tournament, and it was quite interesting to always get your perspective and to get an idea of your feelings. And I never forget the message I sent you the week of the final, and you know, it was a good luck message and hope everything's gone well. And I got a very calm reply back saying, Doc, the training's over, we are super excited. It was as simple as that. I want to know what the feeling was in the camp over that weekend of the semi-finals, a really tough ground-out semi-final against the Welsh. followed by watching the English beat the All Blacks. What was your feeling as you watched that game with a very dominant English team that you were going to face in the coming days? How did you leave? What were your feelings when you left that semi-final, watching that? And how did you feel as a team in the build-up to that final? What was going through your mind?
That's it. That's a very interesting question. So, Doc, as you know, so leading into, so we won a quarterfinal, and now you're probably going to play the All Blacks or the won a quarterfinal. We played on the Sunday. We played our semi-final. So now it's the All Blacks and English playing in the other semi-final. So so we've already started. You normally start your prep the week before. So on the Thursday, I started working on who I think we're going to play in the final. So obviously, I was working on the All Blacks predominantly, and because I thought they're going to win. So your first question, how did I feel on the Saturday evening when I watched that game? After the first half, panic, and not because we're going to play England, because I haven't done any work on England. So myself and Elmarie were on our way out to go and have a glass of wine. So I just cancelled that immediately, and I said, listen, I need to get on England immediately, because I haven't up to then even looked at their stuff. And I'm not saying it disrespectfully at all. There was two reasons why I did that. England was the team that we played the most since we came back from Munster. We played them in a 3-test match series here, the incoming test series in June. And then we played them at the end of the year when we lost 12-11 or something like that. So we have played them 4 times in the lead up to the World Cup. So it was when I had a look at New Zealand and I had a look at England, I was pretty confident in terms of I've had a good idea what England was going to do, or I had an idea in my head. But New Zealand they transformed their general attack a little bit. They changed the way they did things. So from I would say the Rugby Championship going into the first game that we played them at in Yokohama, there was a few alterations in their game. So for me, it was probably making sure that, listen, how did they continue with that trend during the World Cup? So that's why I did a lot of work on them. I did a little bit on England, but not I would probably say the split was 80-20. So then I cancelled. Elmarie said, listen, we're not having one. I need to get up onto England. So just started working on England. And then, we played on the Sunday. And then obviously now you would understand we have normally a turnaround between games are 7 days. So you've got a week, 7-day turnaround. But because we played on the Sunday and our final was on the Saturday, we had a 6-day turnaround. So obviously you lose a day. So we knew that we had to be crystal clear in terms of what we want to do and achieve. So normally on the Monday it would be day off. We would do a review of our game against the Welsh, and we would start preparing and getting our previews ready for the English or for the final or for England, the following match. But because we had a day less, we had to be crystal clear in terms of what we want to train, because we only had I think we had 2 training sessions. So we had the Tuesday, 40 minutes, and we had the Wednesday, 15 minutes. But so we had to do kicking game, defense, attack, set piece, scrum, lines, all that. So as a management team, I thought we were very focused in terms of, listen, we've only got 15 minutes for defense, and what must we spend our time on? So there wasn't clutter, and I thought we were probably forced into that by having only 6 days to prepare and not 7, because normally when you have 7, you overthink things. You've got extra time. If you don't get it right on the first, you've got 3 training sessions. If you don't get it right on day 1, we can still pick it up on day 2 and 3. So we just basically said, listen, guys, we've got 2 training sessions. It's 90 minutes in total, and so we can't get this wrong. So when the players knew, when they got onto the field, listen, this is what we're going to try and achieve in this 40 minutes. We have to get it right and get an understanding of it and execute it. as soon as possible, because you can't, sometimes you'll do a starter move, ball drops, starter move, ball drops, starter move, more. Come on, guys, let's get it right. We only know that we had 5 minutes to do this one starter move, and we're probably going to have the opportunity to do it 4 times. If we drop the ball all 4 times, that's it. Then we go into the test match blind, if you can call it like that. So I think that's probably why we were calm. We had to declutter a lot going into that into the final. So it wasn't because we're playing England that luckily it's not New Zealand. It wasn't at all like that. I mean, the team who got into the final was the best team, and that's a team that we had to beat. If it was New Zealand, New Zealand. If it was England, it's England. If it was Australia, whoever it is, that's the team that you have to beat on that specific day. But I think the calmness came in terms of I thought we were unbelievable. We were crystal clear in what we wanted to achieve in the training sessions, and we were crystal clear that those things would probably have an influence on the game.
Was there a big emphasis on the scrumming, which obviously came through very strongly? Was that one of the things that you targeted and said, that's one area we're going to really focus on dominating?
I think, when you build up to a team, or when you build up in a week, you always look, because how are you going to get points? You only get points when you apply pressure on a team and their defense of that pressure point is not strong enough, and they have to transgress, or they concede a line break, or you get in behind them. So when you sit and start planning for a test match, you probably look at where are the areas that you think you can apply pressure. So obviously you can apply pressure on their weaknesses, or you can say, listen, what is our strength? Let's look at our strength. Can we apply pressure with our strengths? And hopefully you find the area where you feel your strength is probably their weakness. And I won't say that was the scrum, but we had a fairly dominant scrumming performance, I would say, during the whole World Cup. So we obviously saw that as one area where we can apply pressure on them, or try to apply pressure. So I won't say it was a plan and there wasn't more time allocated to scrum. I think it was actually less. Like I said, we had in total split sessions, everything. We had 90 minutes to prepare for a World Cup final. So I think the scrum session would have been a 15-minute session. So literally 6 scrums. Guys, we're going to warm up. We're going to do our routines. We're going to work on our timing. We're going to work on our deload, work on our bind, and then we're going to do 6 live scrums, and that's it. And in those 6 scrums, we need to get confidence. So again, it comes back to, I think we were forced to be very focused, and there wasn't clutter, and the players knew we have 6 scrums to execute in this training session. If we don't get it right now, we don't leave this session with confidence, we can't tomorrow add another 5 minutes and do another 3 hits. We need to get it right today. So I think that's probably, in my mind, and I must say, I think if you ask other coaches, they will have different opinions. But in my opinion and in my mind, I thought that really gave us a nice focus going into that final.
In this difficult time that we've gone through with no live sport, Supersport has replayed a lot of events, and obviously the final has been shown numerous times. And I always come back to that same feeling I had, and I've spoken to others who had the same feeling. That period of play towards the end of the first half, where England were really pressurizing the box, and for a period of 5 or 6 minutes, we kept them from scoring a try. They ended up getting a penalty, but from 5 meters out, they ended back on the 22 from a defensive effort. I can't let you go without giving us your perspective as defensive coach as to what was happening on the field at the time. If you've got some footage you can share with us, we can try and show it. Just a thought process as to what went through the players' minds, your minds there, and perhaps just give us a little bit of an inside information as to that period of critical play.
Okay, yes, I will. And there wasn't something special. Maybe when I show you stuff now, I'll share my screen now. If you see something, Doc, that you feel, listen, let's elaborate on that a little bit, I will do that. So let's give it a shot. I hope it works. Just tell me if you can see that, Doc.
I can see it, but the video is not on yet.
No, the video is not on yet. Okay, so basically to give you a little bit of a insight, So this is the preparation that we would have done on England on their line-out attack, scrum attack, counter attack, their kickoff. So to show you, so there you would see these are all the line-out attacks that England did. Sorry, I think there was, as you can see, there's a total of 60 line-outs. So basically, as a coach, and I would like to take you to this area here, there. To there. So this is probably England's 5-man line-out attack that they utilized, and that they had and all these things that I'm writing down here is basically the start to move and what you have to look for. So as a coach, you go through that, and then you filter it down from 60, and these are the 15 line-outs that I showed our players in terms of the prep going into the final. So as I say, there's 60 things, but you try and limit it down and funnel it and really get clarity, because the clarity gives you excellence. So as you can see, here are the the short line-out attacks that England does, which we felt was an issue. And now I'm going to share the screen with you. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So as you can see, this is England walking in a five-man formation, and there. So what is the edge that a physio has that can be next to the field? So obviously I'm a coach, but because I'm a physio, there's a few things that you have to go through World Rugby in terms of doing all your online courses of World Rugby. And you must still be a physio, and you must still work as a physio, and to give you the right to be next to the field. So you can't, as you would know, but maybe some of the other guys in on the webinar doesn't know, that you can't just you can't be next or roaming next to the field if you don't have a doctor or physio qualification. So that's actually what gave me the right to be there, is to be a physio. And I want to start there, Doc, that when I'm there as a physio. So my primary objective is to make and to look after the safety of the players. So I normally tell guys, when I'm there and the play is going, I don't actually look at I don't know what's happening, because you actually are about 3 or 4 seconds behind the ball. So let's say there's a ball carrier and there's a ruck. I would keep my eyes on that ruck until the last Springbok got off the ground. And then I'll try and see where the ball is now. And then sometimes they've taken the ball into contact again. So I would watch that breakdown again. So I wouldn't know how the ball got from the one ruck to the other ruck, because you literally are looking to make sure that the players are safe. But where you can influence as a coach is when in between episodes of play. So if, for instance, in this picture that you're currently seeing, now the play have stopped. All our players are ready to go. There I'm standing with Cheslin or with Willie, and I'm saying, listen, this is the 5-man line out. Remember, we had a discussion. I showed you the clips. These are the 5-man line out options. It's probably going to be a sail starter move, what we would call a sail. We are thinking the next attack after the starter move will probably go in that direction. So the one thing that I can do there is I can influence them in terms of, remember, this is what we've prepped for, and this is probably what we're expecting are coming our way. And then the play actually happens. And now you're in physio mindset. Now you're looking and you're making sure that the players are getting up of this breakdown. So, and why I position myself there, because if you sit yourself here next to where the AR is, there's too many bodies so that you can't actually see. So I normally like to stand a little bit behind the play, so you can actually have a full view of all these players by positioning yourself there. You would see that even England's physio are not in screen here, because he's probably positioning himself in a position that he can look at his team from the back. So I've had one coach asking me, listen, are you standing there because it gives you a better insight as a coach? No, it gives me a better insight as a medical guy. I can actually have a full view of our team. When I put myself here, there's too many bodies in front of me. I can't have a look at everybody. But so we pretty much prepped in that written stuff. We expected them pretty much to do this. And as you can see, we had a discussion. We thought that their attack is probably going to line up You can see they've got all their speedsters. There's their one wing, there's their other wing, there's their 15, there's their 13. So they've got almost a full loaded backline that can attack us here. And I'm probably gonna, that shouldn't have happened. And now I'm probably gonna spin it up forward a little bit because I had a few questions here. What am I shouting there? And the big thing that I'm shouting there, if I go a little bit in here, you can see that's Malcolm Marx. And Malcolm, if you go back to minute 25, we lost Bongi. And Rassi was talking to me here and telling me, Jacques, because you know Malcolm is a very good poacher of the ball. So the main message that was going on here, everybody thinks, listen, Jacques is giving tactical information. Yeah, I'm pleading for Malcolm not to get a yellow card, because then we wouldn't have we don't have somebody on the bench. So everybody thinks it's this massive tactical thing. No, it was, listen, please, Malcolm, don't get a yellow card. So that was probably, if I go out wide again, that is the big thing I'm trying to let Malcolm know. Please don't get a yellow card, because he likes to have a little bit of a dig at the ball. So for us, if we got a yellow card in this scenario and it was Malcolm, we would have had to go to non-contesting scrums, and that was probably one of the areas we didn't think we can apply pressure. But obviously, them losing Carl Sinclair, and at this stage, I think we are on 30 minutes. We had a few scrums already in this match. So we were seeing that we were actually getting good reward out of our scrum. So the last thing that we would like as a Springbok team now is to go to non-contesting scrums, because we lose Malcolm going for a poach or getting a yellow card. So basically the only conversation there was, listen, Malcolm, go for it, but listen to the referee. If he coaches you off the ball, stay off the ball and be whiter than white. So that was probably the biggest thing. And then obviously this thing goes on for about 60 minutes. Not 60 minutes. I think the whole passage of play was 4 minutes. And the thing to take out of it is probably the players, if I go on and it plays a little bit, I think just the work rate in general, if you look at the players, the urgency getting back on their feet, the fitness getting back into line, I think you will probably find that we are 14 guys on our feet defending predominant and most defensive sides. It's not that nobody else would do that. I mean, if you look at this, I don't think we have a player currently on the ground. If I zoom in close, we've got all our players on our feet. So there's 15 guys defending currently. And England have 3 players who's out of attack. He is probably not an attacking option. If I go to the wide view, his back is turned, so he's not an attacking option. So just in this picture alone, there's 5 England players that cannot receive the ball, where we are currently 15 players on our feet that can defend. So I think probably from in this passage of play, again, I'm taking you back. A refusal to be defeated is not something. It's something that this team have, and it's probably came out in this passage more often than not in terms of how the guys flew through their bodies into collision after collision after collision, and then obviously working hard to get off the ground. So I'm going to spin it forward, fast forward it a bit. So the end is probably over here. I think this was a big play, I would say, where we were a little bit, as you can see, we were a little bit bunched here. They sucked us in nicely, and I thought Billy got a lot of criticism in the whole World Cup. But what people don't necessarily always understand, Cheslin Colby, although he's an unbelievable player, he had probably less than 10 caps. Mapimpi is quite a young winger. So in our backfield, if you look at the back 3, this guy with 60 test matches was probably the reason why these guys weren't flustered in big occasions. You know, he's been there, he's paid the school fees, and during trainings, this guy just feeded these guys information. During the game, he feeded them information, and even here, the authority that he gave a guy like Mapimps to go up and then having the ability to execute this tackle. This was a massive tackle. And then this passage of play of Willie after getting back on his feet and then influencing this actually gave us probably the edge in terms of this passage of play. And then the other, we're done here. They're gonna knock on the ball. If I go out of that into this, and I move this back a bit, I think the other edge that you get, I'm going to open this one up. The other edge that you get is, in being a coach, is that we all saw the Rassi telling me, listen, tell them it was a good passage of play. So after they've taken the penalty, now you actually have the ability to get on the field and discuss and chat to the players and almost recalibrate them in terms of, listen, this was a phenomenal passage of play. They're probably going to get 3 points here. As you can see, everybody is coming in. Everybody is sucking diesel. But just reminding them, okay, listen, we're going to kick off again now. Remember what our kicking game plan is. Andre, you know where we want the ball. We know who's going to make the next tackle. We know that our plan and applying pressure on them is probably going to be this. So almost reiterating the plan and organizing this next restart. And listen, we had a great passage of play of defense currently. It was a massive work rate. But listen, next job at hand, next thing to do is the restart. So let's get that right and execute that. And
thanks very much, Jacques. I mean, that's a great insight there into a small passage of play, just showing us what goes into it. I think people are fascinated by the amount of detail. I know you've got a full day of interview and work with the players, so we're going to wrap it up in the next 5 minutes. I'm going to ask you 2 more questions. One is that one that's come across the question and answers here is, you're not the first coach to be appointed to a position, a high position, without actually having played the game at a high level. Now, that may come with some degree of criticism. The press, as you alluded to with Willie, can be quite toxic at times. How do you plan to handle that? I mean, in terms of potential criticism of you not having those coaching credentials or playing credentials?
I would say, yes. I mean, the first thing is not to hide of it. I think if people see it as a potential risk, I completely agree. And it's something that, as I said, we're quite transparent. So with the appointment, obviously myself, Rassi as Director of Rugby, the CEO, and all the top structures in SA Rugby that does the appointment, we sat down and we had an open, honest conversation and say, listen, what is the positives about getting continuity in terms of getting Rassi? Rassi will still be massively involved in terms of when we started playing as the Springboks again. He will be, as he said numerous times, listen, the buck stops with him, and that's how he visioned it in terms of the Director of Rugby role that he is currently fulfilling. It's not a Director of Rugby sitting in a boardroom. That for that, we've got a general manager of high performance who does that for us, Charles Vessel. So he does the administrative stuff. Rassi does the rugby stuff. And the buck eventually would probably stop between me and him, like Rassi has numerous times said. So the first thing is, listen, don't hide away from it. Yes, it is a risk. And listen, it's a risk that we discussed and that we have made plans for. So I know there will be criticism, and I know you probably, as at the moment, there will be losses. And if there is losses, I mean, the pressure will come and the knives will come. But I mean, we've discussed it at length in terms, me with my employers, and we have made plans and how we will deal with it. And at the end of the day, that's all we can do. We can prepare for it as much as possible. I always feel that if you go from a player into coaching career, like Rassi did, like Victor did, I think you got high performance content because you played the game, but that high performance content will probably last for about three years. And then the game will have moved on so much that if you don't stay with the game in terms of an analytical point of view, in terms of looking at different teams, seeing where attack is going, seeing where defense is going, if you don't keep relevant or keep up with the up-to-date stuff, you're probably going to lose that edge. So definitely, if you are a player and you go into a coaching environment, you have got an edge. you've been there. I've never been there. I've never played a test match. I've never sang the anthem knowing that I'm going to represent my country. I've never done that. But what do I have is, listen, because I don't have that, you have to, how can I say it? You have to get the respect of the players on a different way. It's easy. It's not easy. If you've played it before, you've played 80 test matches for your country or 100 test matches for your country, or like Beastie, you will always have respect, because players will look at you and say, listen, this guy, I've done it. I respect him for that. So for me, you have to earn your respect on a different way. You have to earn it with knowledge. You have to earn it with your work ethic. You have to earn it with being honest. You have to earn it. There's different ways how you can build up your respect within a team. And yeah, that's probably, Doc, I would just have to focus on that. But I can't make myself a rugby player. I've never been one.
Yeah. You know, I'm getting old. Is it my bad eyesight, or are the All Blacks always half a meter offside?
I don't know, Doc. I think they think we currently offside. We've got a lot of, with our new defense system, there's a big debate in terms of are we offside, are we not offside? And I would like to believe we're not, but you push the boundaries as much as you can, you know, and then you have to adapt. The biggest changes of the rugby game currently is probably the athleticism of players getting better, their skill sets getting better. That influenced the game, and then obviously I would say the referees or the rules or the interpretations or keeping it safe. If you think of the tackle law, how concussion and trying to manage concussion has changed the tackle law, the tackles, you know, and making it a safer sport and environment. I think the same is going to happen with the breakdown currently. So the influence will probably come in terms of where the focus of the lawmakers will go, and I'm all for that. If it's going to make rugby a safer game, I'm all for that.
So we're hoping to get back onto the field at some stage, hopefully sooner rather than later. A lot of uncertainty. As a final question, what can Springbok fans, rugby players, your fellow coaches look forward to in the Jacques Nienaber era of Springbok coaching? What are you going to add to the Springbok legacy going forward?
Doc, I would probably say that we would strive for consistency. I mean, to get to the top, a lot of people always say, listen, to get to the top is one thing, but to stay on top is the tough thing. So I think we would probably, and I'm talking about, we discussed this, like I say, we're very transparent and open in terms of a management style. And that was probably one of the goals that we set out, is to get more stability, to be more sustainable in terms of our performances. So I would probably say that would be one of the things that we would like to achieve. We would like to build squad depth, make the squad a little bit bigger. We've got a team that might be able, I won't say too old to go to the next World Cup, but we're looking at a guy like Dwayne and those guys, they might be in the twilight of their career. So I think from our perspective, we must make sure that there's plans in place that would fill the voids if those guys decide to go. So I think that would be a challenge for us to create a squad depth. And then our other big thing, Doc, is that we want to transform as much as possible. I think everybody could see what happened when this team came back. I think we are the people's team in terms of we try and be as diverse and as open, and as we embrace diversity. So I think those three things: to be consistent in winning and staying at the top. Second thing is to transform the team as much as possible, and to really to embrace diversity. And then the third thing is to create squad depth and to have a contingency plan that when we do have players that leave the game because they've served their country well, that we have guys that can take their spots.
Jacques, as I said, you've got a busy schedule. I know you're not on the field, but off the field, you're doing a lot of work. Thanks for the time you've given us, this precious hour. A lot of good questions have come in, which we couldn't get to, but the interest is certainly here from all the people. You have a lot of respect from all of us and from the fans out there, And I know because of that, you have a lot of support. So as a friend, as a colleague, and as our Springbok coach, I want to thank you very much for this hour you've spent with us. And I think I speak on behalf of all South African rugby fans that we look forward to the next few years as you take us forward, and you can count on our support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doc. Thanks for the opportunity and thanks for listening.
Cheers.
Yes.